Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so awesome to see so many familiar faces and names out on Zoom one more time. As we're getting started this morning, I bet maybe you're like me and can't believe that school has been in session now 6+ weeks. Fall is officially here. The state fair is back in full swing. So wherever you are, you know you are in the thick of it again. I don't think for any of us life has slowed down, but we're curious, how are you keeping yourself motivated, especially in this new normal? Please share with us in your chat, or if you're just inspired, shout it out. What's keeping you going these days?
At RC Burleson, it's the amazing staff and our amazing students.
Absolutely. Yes, we definitely need each other, don't we, Miss Johnson? You know, Trustee Carrion likes to tell me it's a corny dog down at the state fair. We do love our kids at United to Learn. And they are a resilient bunch, aren't they? Mm. Oh, I don't know where we would be without our volunteers. Thank you, Deanne. Yes, Carol, we've got to keep up our cardio. Certainly things are better when we're here together, Miss Macklin. We are blessed to have so many friends among us. We're blessed that 49 Dallas ISD elementary schools embrace us, and throughout the community that we get to work together. Well, you guys continue to share in the chat, but I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I know you all want to hear from Miss Cordova. So for those of you who are somewhat new to United to Learn, we have the privilege, as I mentioned, of working with 49 schools all around the city. We invited 20 new, or were invited to work with 20 new schools actually just in the last 15 months. So around the city, that means we are in front of up to 26,000 students and over 2,100 educators every day. And we come together with 30 more partners around the city to drive literacy achievement for our 26,000 students, over half of which are English language learners. So many very successful, strong, rigorous dual language programs around the city, and where over 90% of our students are of color, and many of which, the majority of which, are also living in poverty. So many times our support, our tailored support, it might look like it's professional development for our educators. It might be some wellness for our educators, but it's also backing up that training for things for our students and their families. First and foremost, what are the learning tools? What are the supplies that are in the classroom, on campus, and during COVID that they might need to take home? And how can we make sure that our campuses not only reflect the value of education, but the incredible diversity and potential of all of our young learners? Without the engagement of the community, high school volunteers, corporate volunteers, professional volunteers, faith-based volunteers, we couldn't make this model work. We have a pretty lean budget and only 20 of us on staff. So that means that the hundreds and thousands of you who are out there contributing your hours are really making this model work. Clearly, there was no more time that was more important to come together than over the last 18 months as we all were struggling through the evolving COVID pandemic. And in many respects, was probably the most challenging year for our schools and our families. So it was incumbent upon us to keep driving forward on a lot of our traditional programming, a lot of that PD, tutoring, career days, but maybe in rather non-traditional ways. And of course, we wanted to back up everything we were doing by distributing almost 11,000 individual student learning tools and supplies. Look at those awesome kids, socially distanced on rugs where they can be together and be comfy and spend time in their mindfulness morning moments with everything that they needed. Then, of course, so many of you helped us make sure that our learning environments outside were equally as inspiring as our learning environments inside. So through painting, stenciling, creating inspirational murals, refreshing some teacher workspaces and wellness spaces, we were excited to invest over $400,000 across our schools. But as I mentioned, it was a tough time for our families. And with your help, we were able to deploy emergency support to over 7,000 individuals across the city. This meant meals, 75,000 meals going out, water, almost 11,000 cases of water, and almost $90,000 of financial assistance to make sure that families could meet rent and utility commitments and make sure that their students were staying in their home school and not having to be further displaced over the school year. And I know that we were all concerned, all worried about those looming learning losses. McKinsey told us we could lose up to 18 months. I'm sure that you all read the article that was in the paper yesterday and have been watching the news that said that no, in many cases, we lost many years of progress across the state or across the county. United to Learn schools over the past 5 years leading up to COVID had seen tremendous growth, almost 40% growth in our third grade reading. And once we had embraced our 20 new partners, our third grade reading scores came in right under the district at about 30% of our third graders on grade level. Through the last 18 months, it was a tough time, but we saw that while our district title peer schools across the district may have lost 11 points, which probably compared quite favorably to what was happening across the country. With your partnership, with your support, our United to Learn schools only experienced about 45% of that loss. So as you see in that second couple of columns, that blue bar is the strength of all of our 49 schools, standing above our district partners, our district cohorts. And we saw that many of our schools held steady and a few actually even increased through this very trying period. With this information and many, many conversations with our district partners and understanding where the community can be most effective, we've thought about how we can be laser focused on regaining any of that lost progress. I actually would tell you, I think that the district, that the principal give so much credit to all of you who are on this call, who are our community partners. So when we were thinking about how we can be laser focused into this coming school year, it wasn't surprising that they were saying, can we do a lot of what we've already been doing? We have three main areas of investment where we will focus into this coming school year. First, I think about educator capacity. So again, going back with very tailored training in the area of social and emotional health, and in particular content areas around literacy. Also finding opportunities for teachers, for assistant principals, for principals to come together in collaboratives to share what they know with each other. And then of course, as they too are feeling this incredible stress and pressure to make sure that they are doing the most for students every single day, we want to wrap them up with as much wellness and appreciation efforts as possible. So that means, yes, there will be resilience training, there will be mindfulness, yoga sessions, and also a little bit of love in those teacher appreciation efforts. We know that this is all about students. So in order to expand educator capacity, to give educators the opportunity to focus where they are needed most, it's helpful to bring in more tutors. It's helpful to bring in more well-trained, similarly minded and aligned individuals around the city. So whether that's one-on-one, small group instruction, and even classroom specialized support, our tutor capacity will increase substantially this year. And of course, with everyone we bring into a campus, with every child we are in front of, we want to make sure that they have the necessary equitable resources to make the most of that training. I know that many of you want to be a part of that. You've already signed up to be a part of it. Carol will tell you a little bit later how you can continue to be engaged going forward. But yes, we need you as tutors. We need you as socially distanced and properly safety invigorated and engaged volunteers to make sure that campus improvements are happening as well. So thank you for coming today, for sharing this enlightening opportunity with us, but also for the many contributions that you will continue to make and have made already in this school year. In fact, on that note, I would like to turn this virtual stage over to Marisol Rodriguez. She is our Director of Literacy, and she's going to share a little bit about how you have helped fuel a strong start to the school year.
Thank you, Abby, and hello, everybody. As many of you know, Learning Launch is our annual initiative that ensures our teachers have the materials and resources they need for their students to succeed. We deliberately plan so that these items are delivered in time for preparation for the new school year. This type of support is so important for our teachers because not only does it alleviate some of the burden of spending their own money, but it also gives back something of great value, which is time. Research indicates that teachers spend 7 hours per week searching for instructional resources and an additional 5 creating their own. As a former classroom teacher, I can personally attest to this being true. My teaching team and I would frequently make visits to not only our school, but our local libraries to find the books we needed. We scoured the internet searching for the right resources and spent hours making learning centers, posters, anchor charts that our budgets would not otherwise allow us to purchase. This is important because every hour a teacher spends seeking and making materials is an hour better spent giving students feedback, building parent relationships, analyzing data, practicing self-care, or engaging in any of the other activities that drive student success. I just recently read an article that stated if a carpenter was to act like a teacher, he might start his days not in the lumberyard, but in the forest with a chainsaw, which is why this type of support is so valuable for our teachers and why we are so excited this video with some of the highlights of Learning Launch 2021.
Thank you, Marisol. And thank you to Atmos, a special thank you to Atmos and to the Hillcrest Foundation, who really helped kickstart the fundraising for Learning Launch as well. It was a tremendous success, and we thank all of you. So many of you on the call today too contributed towards the effort. And I know that it really set the right tone, begin the school year across all of our campuses. So now let's turn to our headliner event of the morning, of the afternoon. Susanna Cordova is the Deputy Superintendent of Dallas ISD. Before coming to Dallas, however, Ms. Cordova was the Superintendent of Denver Public Schools. She has over 30 years of experience in high schools, in middle schools, and in elementary schools. And everywhere she went, she had tremendous impact. As a bilingual middle and high school teacher, and then as an elementary school teacher, she spent a lot of time in Title I schools. Within her elementary school experience, she saw 33% increases in state reading assessments over 4 years. She saw tremendous improvements and oversaw tremendous improvements in graduation rates, especially for her Latino students across Denver. But I'll tell you, it's clear that she is very outcomes driven, that she's a visionary leader. But what struck me most when meeting Susanna was her heart, her passion, her desire to be in Dallas and to bring all of that for the betterment of our city. And I was so struck by how lucky we all are to have her as a leader here with us. Sure, she's very familiar with the student demographics across Dallas ISD, given her most recent experience. But when I asked her, why were you coming to Dallas? She absolutely lit up. She lit up not only because of the students, because she had been doing her homework. She had been spending time learning about our city and learning about our leaders. And she very much aligned her idea, her vision of what achievement and progress should look like and should feel like with what was already happening in Dallas. So with the great experiences that she had had in Denver, she knew that she could come to Dallas, and she believed that in Dallas, great things could happen, and she wanted to be a part of it. She's only lived here 6-7 months, but I would venture to say that her heart has been here for years. We are so grateful to have Ms. Cordova with us this morning. And with that, I would like to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you for that incredibly generous and warm welcome. I'm really delighted to be able to be here today with everybody. I think I'm going to be able to share my screen. Is that right? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick then, so that I can get this up and running. Can everybody see my screen? Perfect. Well, when Abby approached me to see if I'd be willing to talk about to talk with you today, it was a really easy yes to get to, because as you just heard, I've been so incredibly impressed with the willingness of the community to wrap our arms around our students and our district. It is absolutely part of what attracted me to come here. And I want to tell you a little bit about my journey, about what did really attract me to Dallas, how my childhood and my upbringing connects to that, and what is so exciting about the work that we're engaging in together. And I always try to start grounded in the words of people who I think have inspired me throughout my life. And this quote is a quote that really resonates with me. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And we are so honored to be able to help prepare the leaders of tomorrow today in our schools. Over 143,000 students really are looking to us to prepare them for a future that they do not yet know, that frankly we don't always yet know. But it really is just a tremendous gift that we have to be able to look into the faces of our students, some of them who start with us at 3 years old, some of them who are with us all the way to 21, and to invest in what the future will bring for all of us. So let me talk to you a little bit about my Denver to Dallas journey. I spent 31 years teaching and leading in the Denver public schools. Was a student. Every time I'm in a group of people here in Dallas and I hear people talk about the elementary, middle, high schools that they went to, shout out to all the Skyline graduates. I've met so many people from Sunset, people who have grown up in the city and have chosen to spend their careers here. That was really my story in Denver. And so what in the world would lead me to leave the beautiful mountain climate, my entire family, the only place that I've ever lived and worked, and to come here? Well, I think it really goes all the way back into thinking about what opportunity looks like for kids who grew up like I did. So let me tell you a little bit about that. So I was a Head Start student, and Head Start, as many of you know, was part of the war on poverty. It was the investment that President Johnson was making in trying to turn the tide for generations of low-income students like I was. And this is a picture of me at my Head Start graduation with my grandmother, Carmen, and my brother Steve. Head Start was really my first opportunity. I was not one of those gifted kids who read before they got to school. My mom loved to read, but I didn't learn how to read. I don't think I really learned how to read until kindergarten or first grade. I remember Head Start really clearly, probably most from the artifacts that my mother still has of what it looked like. But it was really my first opportunity to get engaged in formal learning outside of my home. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my home and about my mom. This is my mother. Her name is Rita, at her high school graduation. My mother was a twin. She had a twin brother. She had an older sister who didn't graduate from high school. And my mom, when she was in school, wasn't really sure what she was going to do after high school. She went to a low-income, mostly minority school in Denver prior to desegregation. And most of what she heard when she talked with her teachers were messages like, "You're not smart enough," or "You can't do this work." And she tells a story about how her algebra teacher got angry at her for asking her a question and kicked her out. And so she went down the hallway crying, and a teacher pulled her in. She ended up taking a business math class. That teacher took an interest in her and said, "Hey, you might be interested in going to school to learn how to become a secretary." You got to remember, this is the early 60s. So my mom got a scholarship for 1 semester and went to a college in Southern Colorado. And in about November, suddenly realized that she didn't have money for tuition for a 2nd semester, and she dropped out. And so her college experience really consisted of 1 semester of school. And I got to say, my mother is one of the smartest people I know, one of the hardest working people that I know. And the only reason she even got to that 1 semester was because somebody stepped out of their way to help her find out about an opportunity. But largely her experiences were limited. I was really fortunate. My mother decided that that was not going to happen to her children, and she very deeply invested in us and was determined that we would be able to make it to and through college. And it was never a question. And she was going to make whatever sacrifices she needed to, she and my father both, to make sure that my brother and I could go to college. My dad worked 2 jobs so that he could help pay the tuition for us to go to school. I had to get scholarships. I had to work in the summer, but it really was so important to her that I do that. While I was in school, in the Denver Public Schools, about halfway through my elementary school is when desegregation happened. And the reason I thought it was important to name that is because desegregation didn't happen because the district wanted it to happen. The Desegregation Act happened in Denver because people in the community stepped up. They frankly stepped up to sue the district. Board members stepped up to implement a plan. And it's really true that schools can only change and create equity if there are people on the inside and people on the outside who push to make the kinds of changes that we know create opportunities. And so my high school experience, in contrast to my mother's, was very, very different. I was able to take AP classes that my mother was not able to take, advanced or honors coursework. I was able to get support around thinking about college. And one of the most important people who helped me was the Spanish teacher at my high school. I didn't even take Spanish, but he went out of his way to make sure that my parents, he was not the college counselor, but he went out of his way to make sure that my parents knew how to fill out college application forms, tuition waiver forms, that we understood the process, because obviously, my mother hadn't gone very far. My dad didn't even graduate from high school, and we really needed that additional help to be able to do it. And just like that teacher who helped my mother get 1 semester, My teacher helped me get a scholarship that got me all the way through college. And it truly is because of him that I was able to be at this point, which is my college graduation, again with my grandmother and my aunt, celebrating being the very first person in my family to graduate from college. It was a really big accomplishment, and it's such an important reason for me to want to invest in ensuring that children just like me and just like my mother have the opportunities to succeed and do well in school. And as I mentioned, it takes those of us who work on the inside, but it takes so much more. It takes people who are willing to go out of their way to volunteer their time, whose job, it's not their job to do it, just like my Spanish teacher was not his job to advise me on college, but he took it on. It's just like the countless tutors and volunteers with United to Learn. It's not your job, but you've chosen to invest in our students. That's what it takes to get us to and through college. I think it's so important. Part of my why of becoming an educator is also my family. My husband has a story very similar to mine. He's the first in his family to graduate from college. And it really is, I think, important to name that within 3 generations, both of us having parents who were high school dropouts or didn't finish college if they tried, both of us have graduated from college, and both of our children have. My daughter right now is a junior at Stanford, something that I still can't say without the words feeling funny in my mouth, because it seemed so out of reach. If you had asked my mother, that would have been, it would have been easier to land on the moon than it would have been for my mom to go to Stanford. And within 2 generations, we've been able to make it. That really is what education does. That really is my why. And so I'm actually going to take a moment here, and I'm going to ask everybody to just look at the chat. Go to the chat and write down, what's your why? Why are you an educator? Why have you chosen to spend your time? If you're not a formal educator working for Dallas ISD, you're an educator working with United to Learn. Why have you chosen to do that? And let's see what some of the comments in the chat look like. It's my calling to inspire and leave a legacy. Children, the children are my why. Proud to be a Dallas ISD graduate. Education and health are the foundation to life. To make a difference, to make a difference. To make a difference. To pay it forward. To ensure children get a chance and a second chance to be successful. Just think what would have happened if my mother had gotten a second chance. How different her life would have been. Everyone deserves a great education because of all of the educators that I had who mentored me. Education is the greatest opportunity everyone has. It's my mission. So important. We are all brought to the field of education as part of our why. And staying grounded and connected to that why is so essential as we think about what it is that we do in our work. So thank you for everybody for sharing that. So why Dallas, right? So I lived in this beautiful city, and what would bring me here? You know, Dallas is an amazing place. I first came to know Dallas. I did an immersive weekend through the Chamber of Commerce here and learned about what was going on. My husband and I were both on this trip, and we were just amazed at the climate that was here around education, about the investments that were being made, about openly the leadership of our city talks about the need for greater racial equity, and the real action that we saw taking place to invest in our community to make sure that the experiences in South Dallas mirror the experiences in North Dallas, and to make sure that we are making the right investments to help ensure that all children have the opportunity to succeed. And that really is a big part of it that brought me here. And then I had come to know Dr. Hinojosa back in the middle 2010s, around 2015, I got to know him. And I've just been an admirer for quite some time about the amazing work that has been happening here. A lot of the work looked really familiar to me because many of the innovations that we were doing in Denver, I see happening here in Dallas as well. But in a lot of ways, I see them happening on a much larger scale. Dallas is a significantly larger school district and with a real focus on being nimble and fast. And that was really appealing to me to think about how I could join a team that was future facing and relentless in the pursuit of excellence and equity. And there's so many great things that are happening here. And I'm sure there are things that keep you here in Dallas. One of the realizations that I've had is that we could go anywhere. I didn't realize it at the time, having grown up and spent my entire career in Denver, but the truth is we could be anywhere. And there are so many things that keep us here in the district. I'll tell you mine, and feel free to put this in the chat as well. What keeps me here in Dallas really is the amazing people. Every place I've gone, I've been welcomed with open arms. There's a willingness to try things and to get better fast. Fail forward is a concept that I think is really the lived ethos here. We're going to try it. If it doesn't work, we're going to fix it and try it again. It's such a great way for us to be able to move the district forward. So leadership and learning really are indispensable to each other. You just saw Abby share some of the statistics for our United to Learn schools, but the reality is we have faced tremendous challenges over the past 18 months. And in many ways, we're back to where we started prior to the rapid acceleration and improvement that we had seen here in the district. And it's going to be really important that we are thinking about our learning agenda as we move forward to be able to address the gaps that we are seeing emerge. And so I shared this with our principals this summer, but I want to revisit this concept. This is a graph from Transcend Education, and they've been doing lots of work thinking about what is it that we're going to need to do to recover from the impacts of the pandemic? And if you go back to March 2020, really a lot of what all of us were doing was just responding. It was like immediate, like we're going to go out on spring break because we're fearful of what's happening with COVID. How do we respond to that? We're not going to come back. How do we respond to that? We need to get kids access to computers and the internet. How do we respond to that? We need resources. How do we respond to that? So there was just this critical crush of response kind of actions, very quick, very fast, but very much reactive and responsive. We're now in this space of recovery, where we're looking at, okay, we've done all of that hard work of like getting things out to people. Now we've got to start to recover. We've got to be able to get back on track to be able to do that. But what Transcend is really saying, if all we do is respond and recover, it's really likely that we're going to just revert to the status quo. Because where we were prior to the pandemic, while it was on an upward trajectory, was still not equitable for all kids. There were still far too many students who were left out of the promise of education. For as much hard work as we were all doing, and as much as we have to be proud of, we still know that we weren't reaching everybody. And so they really do recommend that we think about what's the reinvention that we can do in addition to the recovery. And I think we thought we would be able to be reinventing a lot faster. I think this fall and the rise of the Delta variant really has made us pause to think, okay, around recovery and reinvention, how do we think about doing that in ways that keep everybody safe, that help push on the practices that we know are going to accelerate, but also how do we think really differently about what education can look like to start pushing the reinvention that we know is going to be so critical to change the experiences of our students, particularly knowing about the gaps that we've had. So there are a few things I really want to highlight, and I'm going to hope that my technology works for us. I want to first share a quick video from this summer and the summer experiences that we had. So let's see if I can get this to work.
Could you come to the
Oops. Let me get back into my slides. Sorry about that. And part of the reason that I wanted to show that was because, oh, I really got out all the way. Sorry about that. Let me get back in real quick. Was because we really knew that learning needed to take place everywhere, not just, hold on, I'm gonna stop sharing for one moment. Not just during the school day, not just in academic classes, but also in the summer, after school. That learning needed to happen around the arts, that we needed to get kids out of the normal way we typically thought about learning, to expand their engagement, and that was going to be so critical for us to be able to help accelerate both recover and to be able to reinvent what learning looks like. I'm going to pause just really quickly so I can make sure I'm back into my slides. I apologize for that. Hold on. One second. This always happens. I apologize. If we were in person, it would have been a lot easier. Just one second.
No worries. It's hard to become a Zoom expert.
There we go. I just clicked out of a little bit too much. Hold on. Almost there. Here we go. There we go. The other thing that we are working on in terms of reinvention and recovery is thinking about how we can create really high quality curriculum to help make sure that the experiences while we're inside our classrooms really does support our students. And one of the things that we just came out of was our first Intersession week. And our Intersession schools were able to have more students stay during our Intersession week to engage in our heroes and villains lesson, our Intersession module. And so what was really great about that was we could see what learning looks like, what those extension activities look like. And frankly, in a lot of ways, what we're trying to do with a lot of our recovery work is democratize the gifted experience. When we think about what parents who have the means to extend their students' learning, you know, they pay for their students to go to summer camps or to integrated activity opportunities, things like our Intersession week. And here are just a couple of quotes from the work that happened during our first Intersession. Our students are feeling more empowered with the learning that they might have missed during the pandemic. These Intersession weeks are a way to even the playing field and get students up to speed with their peers. And so we know that it's going to be really important for us to continue to seek out new ways to think about acceleration for our students. Another thing that's super impressive that I hope everybody is looking at are the drop-in acceleration lessons that our curriculum and instruction team has created. We've created over 250 drop-in lessons that are aligned to all of our grade levels that have supports for what kids can do if you find that students have missed something in their learning. These are these really short lessons to help accelerate and fill some gaps. They're very engaging, very entertaining, self-contained, and really can just be dropped in for students to be able to learn. And so as you can see here, there are video-based activities. There's a pre-assessment, a post-assessment, and the materials that go along with students. So really, really helpful. And then finally, the last video that I want to show, hopefully folks have seen this, but if you haven't, it's such a powerful video, is about our PTech program. So I'm going to show that really quickly because of what it does.
Susanna, the sound is not sharing through.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and stop that. And I'll just talk about our PTech program because of how powerful it is. What is really so impressive to me about our PTech program is PTech really is helping ensure that all of our students have the opportunity to have access to programs that will allow them to gain high wage, high demand jobs, to earn college credits. And we just confirmed yesterday, in fact, that fully 10% of our graduating class last year, almost 900 students, graduated from high school with an associate's degree. And what is even more impressive about that is our students who were in the PTech program, the most recent graduating class, fully a third of those students failed one of their 8th grade STAR assessments. So these are students who by all other measures would be students who we might say were not going to be successful and whose learning opportunities were limited. And defying the odds, over 890 students graduated with associate's degrees last year. That's an amazing, amazing number. And we really are just at the very early stages of the growth in our PTech program. I'm so inspired by how much more we're going to see happen with us. So I would love to now give everybody an opportunity again in the chat to just say, what are you most hopeful about as we think about the recovery and reinvention that's happening in our district around education? So let's open up the chat again, so that we can see what people are most hopeful about. Real change, collective change, excited about closing the opportunity gap, the innovation that it's spurred. It's so true when you think about how quickly we innovated. If we had asked, how long will it take to get all of our teachers using technology and adopting virtual platforms? I think most of us would have said, here's the 5-year plan to get us there. And really, we did it in about 3 months. It's pretty amazing. Student resilience. So much of what I believe will make a difference is investing in the mindfulness, in the resiliency work that is so critical for our students, for our teachers, and frankly, for ourselves. I think that's also going to be really important. Making sure that we don't recede from centering equity at the center of our district strategy is so critical. If we don't do that, I think that everything else will pale. It's going to be so important that what we're doing is centering equity in that work. Hopeful and inspired by how passionate and motivated people in education are for change. This is an opportunity that we have. We can think about it as a challenge, but truly, I think this really is an opportunity for us to embrace thinking differently about what it is that we do. So thank you to everybody who put that in the chat. I want to just begin to wrap up with a couple pictures from one of my school visits last year. I'm a big believer in growth mindset. And so I knew I had to take a picture when I saw this. It's the power of yet. I engage every year in a process called Best Year Yet. I was talking with a colleague about doing a session, and I said, I'd love to do this session on Best Year Yet. And he's like, great, I'll order the book. And he ordered copies of the wrong book, Best Year Ever, which I'm sure is a great book. But Best Year Ever means that there's not another one that's going to come. Best Year Yet means that this is the best one yet. There's still more and greater years to come. The power of yet is really what I think is the driver in education. For so many of our students, the answer when they say, I can't do this, has to be, you can't do this yet. And I think that's where we are. We know that we've experienced challenges. We know that it's been hard, that we've had some setbacks. But the reality is, with our growth mindset, we're not there yet, but we are going to get there. And I think it's so, so important to be able to stay grounded in the power of yet. For me, I'm so excited to be able to say that this is my home now. I'm fully moved in. I'm establishing roots. I'm very, very invigorated by the community that I have encountered here, and so proud to be able to say that I'm a member of the Dallas team. And my why, as I started off with, it's not just my preschool graduation. It's not just my kids and their ability to graduate and go to college. It really is the opportunity to scale this out to all of the kids here in Dallas. It was so fun to attend graduations this past spring and see the hopefulness in the eyes of our students and their families. It's so exciting to think about the generations that are going to be changed because of the opportunities that our students here are having, just the way it changed the generations in my family. And I'm incredibly grateful for organizations like United to Learn, who have made it their why to ensure that we have the support that we need to do the hard work of educating kids and breaking those historic patterns of inequity. Without the support of organizations like United to Learn, without the generous benefactors who contribute, without the volunteers who spend their time with our students, we wouldn't be able to do this. And so I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful to all of your support. It's really the collaboration that makes the difference for our students. And so with that, I will wrap up. And Abby, I think if we have a little bit of time, I'd be more than happy to take some questions.
Wonderful. And I just can't thank you enough for spending your time with us today. It's an honor to call you neighbor. And gosh, so much about your why, about your story, I know resonated with many of us on the call. My mom's on the call today, so she and I were chatting back and forth about some of what you were sharing about your own upbringing. So thank you for being so honest with us about why you're here today. As we wait for others to come with their questions, I want you to expand a little bit more about how Intersession is working. A few of us had the privilege of being on the campus actually of Jackalow during Intersession and seeing those heroes and villains all suited up. But one of the things that Principal Barrios shared was not just how important and how impactful the Intersession calendar is for students, but what it also has been for teachers. That there were a few educators who said, I needed this. I needed this more intensive time with a few of my students who I knew needed more. This really spoke to my soul. Was that part of the idea behind building out these very personalized calendars? Can you speak to that at all?
Sure. I'll speak to it on both ends. Our schools that stepped up both for the school day redesign and for Intersession really are schools that knew that they wanted to be able to provide more for their students. And Intersession in particular is a way, we have the majority of our schools that are doing extended calendar using the Intersession model. And so it, creates a smaller class size. It creates an opportunity to think about learning in a different way. It gives us more time with kids who really need that more time. It gives us an opportunity to think differently about what learning can look like. And the part that I think is also really good is it also gives some well-needed breaks to other teachers and students throughout the school year. And one of the things I think we're going to have to be really thoughtful about as we grapple with the hard work of the next few years is how do we balance the intensity of investing in students and student needs and the intensity of ensuring that our adults have the resilience and the stamina to keep it going. And so Intersession actually in some ways is a really ideal way to do that because we can get some of the kids who have the highest needs back in on those intersessions, but we also can intersperse some really well-needed breaks for the adults in the building who are not working in intersessions.
Thanks. Here's one from Byron Sanders. Byron, thanks for being here today. So he is asking if you can discuss how the district is handling the legislation out of the last session designed to suppress discussions around race. The district is so committed to the work it's done. So what is the plan for moving forward in this current climate?
Yeah, so thank you. I think it's a really, really important question. I think first and foremost, it's really important to name, as a K-12 district, we have never taught critical race theory, and that's not something that we ever had on our in our curriculum, nor is it something that we plan to include. But we also think it's really important to name that as a district that lives with the legacy of segregation, of inequities, that it is really important that we continue to confront and face head on the important work of creating greater social justice. And that comes through really working on understanding how to create a nurturing environment for our students. That means we do need to understand ourselves, our culture, our own biases, and that we need to be able to think about how we create a classroom environment, a school environment, and a district environment where we are deeply investing in acceleration strategies for all of our students, but with a particular lens on how do we do that for the students who need that support the most. And in almost every metric that you can look at, our African-American students need that investment in their support and their success the most because they have the history of the least level of investment in their success. And so that was part of the reason why I was so deeply attracted to coming to Dallas, is that it's an organization that has been very open about supporting racial equity. It's one of our strategic initiatives. We report on it, we work on it on a regular basis inside the district. We report on the outcomes on a regular basis to the board, and we're not going to stop.
Well, and I would tell you that, one of the things that across our membership, our board as well, we are so proud to partner with the district. I would say that you and your fellow leaders are quite brave. I think that Dr. Hinojosa would say, no, we just say what is right. We're not acting brave. We may make bolder statements than others, but it's always an honor to stand by you. And even as we went through this process and the district, put out a policy in defiance or, against the critical race theory legislation, it was, we felt that it was our duty to align with you in that work.
Well, and if I could just add, I think the intention of legislation like that is to make people question what they can or can't do. And like very transparently, I'll just name, I get a question like that. And the first thing that I think in my head is like, I wonder what I can say or what I can't say. And then the second thing I think is, you know what, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to talk about what I know we are doing, what I know is right to do, and about what is going to make a difference around the things that brought me to education. You just heard my why, what brought me and what keeps me in education. And I think the most important thing that we can do is when we hear that voice in our head is to just reject it. Because I think the goal is to try to make us question whether or not we can do what we know we need to.
You also mentioned a little bit about, what is needed for our Black students and an acceleration strategy. One of the questions in the chat is, what is the district strategy in particular to address decline in test scores for African-American males?
Sure.
She mentioned, go right ahead.
Sure. So let me talk about this in two sections, because I think it's really important to talk about both what are we doing to address where we've seen gaps, but also what are we doing to accelerate where we know we have strengths that we should be building on. So one of the metrics that we track is how are we doing with getting kids who have demonstrated ability enrolling in honors coursework and being on track to take those really important gatekeeper classes like algebra in 8th grade to get through a sequence that gets you through calculus in high school. And we've put tremendous focus on making sure that all students, but with a particular lens on African-American students who have met the STAR expectations in 5th grade, are enrolled in honors classes in 6th grade. And that sounds like a no-brainer. But the reality is, when we looked at data, we have kids who clearly demonstrate, because they're actually at meets, who are not enrolled in those honors classes. And so I think the most important thing that we can really make sure that we're doing is that we're living up to our values, and that we're not just, that we are actively recruiting students who we know meet the criteria to get into those courses. So that's been a tremendous area of focus for us. Let me talk about what we also know we need to do. We have seen more regression, and I think it's really important to be able to say it's not because of anything about our students. It has to be about what we do in response, both around the recovery and the reinvention. And I think really creating the enabling conditions that affirm the identity of our students, that see them as capable and worthy, and that is accompanied by the skills on the part of educators to help accelerate. So the work in reading academies, for example, to make sure that our educators really do understand the science of reading at the lower grades is critically important. But it also then has to be in a classroom that creates the enabling conditions for our students to be seen as worthy, to acknowledge Black excellence, and to support them to meet the standards that we know they can. And so it's both a belief system, as well as developing the skills on the part of the educators to make sure that that's happening on a daily basis for our students.
Well, I think you are clearly singing the song of our learning environments team out in the hall. That's exactly what they think about every day, is what else can we do to partner with schools and create more and more affirming, aspiring learning environments where kids can see themselves absolutely succeed. I think that is the last of our questions today, but I have one for you. So you haven't spent a fall in Texas yet. Some would say that fall is probably our prettiest season. What are you looking forward to doing if you do get maybe even a weekend afternoon to yourself?
Well, I was really excited last week because I heard that there was a cold spell coming in to Dallas. And then I heard it's only going to be 82 degrees. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is an adjustment, isn't it? But it has been nice to see the evenings begin to cool off for sure. I have, this is a true story, funny story. When I first came to Dallas ISD, we were working on the calendar and they kept talking about these fair days. And I was like, fair days, fair days. formative assessment, individual reflection. I was like trying to figure out what's a fair day until I realized, oh, like it's for the state fair. People go to the fair. We have like a day to go to the fair. And so I did have to laugh. So I'm definitely looking forward to going to the state fair. So
Well,
that'll
awesome.
be my autumn activity.
Yes, well, we hope that you and Eric get to enjoy a fun fair day, and we thank you again for being with us today. This was an amazing way for us to celebrate our fall summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to turn our virtual stage now over to Carol Golia, our president, who has a few announcements before we wrap up.
Yes, thank you, everybody. We're so excited that everybody is here. We have just a few more things. One is to thank you for your support on North Texas Giving Day. As you know, this is a community-wide movement across our region, and 65 people donated to United to Learn, raising over $53,000. So thank you so much for showing that you believe in us, in addition to what you gave for our Learning Launch campaign. And then also we want to take a few moments. We'll have a few more announcements after this, but we're going to turn on a little music. Since we are continuous learners, just like all of you, we want to learn how you felt about the time today with Ms. Cordova. And so thank you so much for giving that feedback. We're going to play music for a few minutes, and then we'll have a few more announcements. The survey link is in the chat. Okay, one thing that we like to do, I would love to hear in the chat at the end of all of our meetings, before we do a few more announcements, is share a like, a learn, and a long for. As you're thinking about the survey, if people also want to share a like, a learn, and a long for. Okay, we're seeing lots of, thank you very much for your likes, your learns, and your long fors. And just a few announcements on the next slide. Thank you to everybody for filling out the survey. We will do another one of these summits again on April 19th. And between now and then, we also will have Community Campus Day. So I know schools are turning in their applications for what projects they want on their campus. And for the investors on the line, we hope that you and your corporate or organizational teams are going to come together and be on one of those campuses to do those projects. And then we also want everyone to know about our current volunteer opportunities. So when you go to our website, many of you receive the monthly email that gives a roundup of different opportunities, but definitely go to unitedtolearn.org and /volunteer. And you'll be able to browse current volunteer opportunities from there. That is another great place where we showcase so much that is going on in ways that you can plug into our campuses. So with that, I think that's it for today. We're giving you a little time back, and we are so, so honored to work with every single one of you. Have a great day.